Hi, I'm Helen from SBI4U Miss Lauren class. Today I will be giving a presentation about endangered species from different parts of the world and actions that can be taken to conserve these species. So this is our today's content. First, we will look at three endangered species and their characteristics including population dynamics. Second, we will look at human roles and activities that make these species endangered. Moving on to the next part, we will also learn what kinds of conservation groups are there to help these species and see if their actions are effective or not. Last but not least, we will also look at the steps that we can take to help these endangered species all around the world. Okay, so let's jump right into our presentation. So the first species that I'm gonna talk about is the Ayeyarwady dolphins. So these are the endangered species in Myanmar currently. So they have gray to dark slate blue color. They have small dorsal fins and their forehead is high with sharp beak and a blunt snout. They are really round behind the middle of the back. They are kind of similar to beluga whales, and their niche is to feed on and regulate population of fish, cephalopods, and crustaceans. They also aid in cooperative fishing in Myanmar, which is really cool. Okay, so let's look at their location and habitat. So they are found in South Asia and Southeast Asia, including Myanmar. They inhabit coastal areas and not in offshore waters. They prefer brackish waters at river mouths and deltas. They are aquatic type, they are carnivores, and they are the top predators. They swim slowly with sluggish movement, and especially during the night in areas with low visibility, these dolphins use echolocation to orientate in the river and detect their prey. They usually feed on any type of fish, but especially bony fish and fish eggs. These dolphins communicate through clicks and buzzing calls to identify each other. So now we know about their habitat. Let's look at their reproduction and growth. So for reproduction, they have K-rated strategy. They have the mating behaviors of polygamy, which means that males mate with a number of females. Their reproduction season is from December to June, and for females, the gestation period is usually from 9 to 14 months, but it also depends on each females. They are reproductively mature in 7 to 9 years, and their lifespan is usually 30 years. Female yield a single baby with an interval of 2 to 3 years. So right now there are 79 dolphins in the Ayeyarwady River, which is an increase in the population according to the Wildlife Conservation Society because of all the conservation that is going on within the region. You also find out about this later in other slides. They calculated that 7 new dolphins are born each year. They have a clump distribution patterns and they usually live in 3 to 6 individuals, but they can live up to 30 individuals in one group. We now know that these are really adorable creatures, but let's think about what is causing them to become endangered. This is mainly because of the human activities, and we have three reasons here. The first reason is because of the entanglement in gill nets. So these dolphins usually get entangled in gill nets that the fishermen use for fishing. The another reason is because of the illegal fishing method, which is electrofishing, and many of these dolphins die because of these kind of fishing. Another main reason is because of the mercury poisoning from gold mining around Ayeyarwady River. So there are many gold mines around the Ayeyarwady region, and many of the dolphins die because of this reason as well. So these are just some pictures of the dolphins that died from the human activities. Now let's look at the mortality and fluctuations on the population. So from 2002 to 2016 surveys, there are 42 deaths in these animals. Here from 2002 to 2016, 2002 was the worst year with only 37 individuals in the region. But throughout the year, there are some fluctuations in the population and the death rate. But here in 2020, according to the Wildlife Conservation Society and the Fishery Department survey, they conducted that there are 79 dolphins inhabiting in the part of the Ayeyarwady rivers, and this was an increase in 1 year period. So which means that the population is starting to increase again because of the conservation programs that has been running through the region. So let's look at what kind of conservations that we have for these dolphins. So the fishery departments of Myanmar and the Ayeyarwady Dolphin Conservation Team, they launched awareness campaign not to incur losses in marine resources and not to catch the dolphins together with other fish, because this was one of the main reasons that result in the decrease of the overall population of dolphins. They also conducted these Wildlife Conservation Society and Fishery Departments. They together conducted Ayeyarwady dolphins conservation and a survey throughout the years. I guess starting from 2020, they have been making a survey on these population rates. And gold mining has been eliminated in some of the areas, but as I'm living here in Myanmar, I think this is not really working, even though that the law has been implemented that some of the gold mines have to be eliminated. So these are the conservation programs that are running right now in the Ayeyarwady region. But what other conservations that we could do to save these vulnerable dolphins? From my research, I think that the first thing that we need to do here is to reduce or eliminate illegal fishing activities. For example, electrofishing, which is really bad for these dolphins. We also need to strengthen the protected area management team and infrastructures. The next thing we should do is that we need to monitor the status of the dolphins on the population rates, on the death rates and stuff in a really specific way. And the next thing we could do here is to involve local people in the development and implementation of conservation plan, which I think is really important because later on these local people will be the only individuals who will be protecting these vulnerable dolphins. So let's move on to the next species. So the next species that I have chosen in my presentation is koala. So we all love koala, and they are currently the endangered species in Australia. So let's talk about their characteristics. They are tree climbing animals with a pouch for development of offspring. They are fuzzy with coarse wool-like hair. They have two opposite thumbs on hands and two toes fused together. And they also have rod pecks and claws on hands and feet to grab onto the branches and trees. Now let's explore their habitat. So these koalas, they live in eucalyptus forests of southeastern and eastern Australia. They are found in every part of Australia. They are herbivores. They rely on eucalyptus trees and they don't drink much water. The interesting thing here is koalas feed on eucalyptus leaf, and eucalyptus leaf are toxic. So these koalas' digestive system has to work really hard to digest it and breaking down the toxin and extracting limiting nutrients. And this is why koalas sleep so much, from around 18 to 22 hours a day, to get the extra energy from sleeping. Okay, so now that we understand a bit better about koalas, let's find out their population. First, let's look at their reproduction and growth. So younger females breed one juveniles each year. Older females breed every 2 to 3 years. They also have a K-rated strategy. They live up to 10 to 12 years, sometimes up to 18 years. And the juvenile leave its mother's home between 1 to 3 years. So let's look at their population. So right now in Australia, they have 30,000 to between 50,000 koalas in the overall areas, and this is a 30% decline since 2018, which we all know that there have been wildfires back in 2018-19. Their density ranged from 0.404 hectare and their distribution pattern is uniform because they have home trees and they visit the same trees regularly. Unless they breed or unless they have any other activities to do, they don't usually visit to another koala's home trees. They just live on their own home trees. This is one of the reasons why koalas need large habitat. So what are the major pressures on the decline of the koala's population? So first, droughts and wildfires. We know that back in 2018 and 19, the Australia wildfires really had a big impact on the overall population of koalas. And because of these wildfires, koalas also have a higher risk of predation now, especially from dingoes and large owls. In 19th and 20th century, they are also hunted for fur. This is one of the human activities that decrease the population of koalas. And also they lost 80% of their habitat from land clearing and logging, especially in 2019 and 2020. And 4,000 koalas are killed each year by cars and dogs. Now let's look at their mortality and fluctuations on the population. The 3 years before 2012 and 3 years after 2012, population trends conducted that there have already been a decrease in the overall population of koalas from that time. So the overall population declines up to 24% in 2012. And this is the koala population in 2018 and 2021. So in 2018, there are over 40,000 to 80,000 koalas in Australia. But in 2021, the population declined to around 30,000 and 50,000 koalas. So this is a really big decline in the overall population, up to 30%. Last year, a New South Wales inquiry found koalas could go extinct by 2050 unless there is some kinds of urgent actions on these declining population. It also estimated the Black Summer bushfires of 2019 and 20 had killed 5,000 koalas and affected 24% of habitats in New South Wales alone. And this is only in New South Wales, and this doesn't include any other place yet. So here, if we look at this, in Canberra, the koala population have already gone extinct since 2018. And if we compare the different divisions here, we can see that there's only declines in overall population. Now you might be probably wondering, are there any kind of conservation running to protect these koalas? Yes, there is. So now Australia have more wildlife hospitals. They have more rescue organizations, zoos that keeps or take in koalas. There are also volunteering jobs to take care for injured koalas. Australia Zoo is also making so much efforts to buy large tracts of land to set aside for koalas. And there are also koala sanctuaries and reserves all over the place in Australia. They also have new plans coming up for saving koalas from extinction. The more than 20,000 hectares of state forest on the Central Coast, Southern Highlands, North Coast, and Henderwood koala habitat will be used as new koala reserve. 20 million from New South Wales Environmental Trust will be also used to purchase land with prime koala habitat. So these are the new plans that they are working on right now to save these koalas from extinction. Here, I think the other thing that can be done is to raise funds to buy new land for koala from all over the countries or all over the places around the world. We can raise funds for these koalas. I think this is the next steps that we can take to save koalas from being extinct. Here is just a picture of their reserve and koalas park and hospitals that are there in Australia. Now we will be moving on to our last species that is included in my presentation. It is the bald eagle, which is the national symbols of the United States. They were once considered as the endangered species, but they have recovered from being endangered through human conservation. I guess we all know bald eagle, right? They have a really unique appearance and characteristics. They have snowy white feathers on their heads and tail. They have brown body. They have razor-like talons. They are a large, powerful birds with 80 inches wingspan, as you can see here. And they also have a coating for light detecting cells on retinas to spot prey from up to a mile away. They weigh 6 to 14 pounds. So their location and habitat. They are found in North America, Alaska, Canada, the lower 84 states, and Mexico's except Hawaii. They inhabit arid area reside in woods by rivers and lakes. They are carnivores. They are the top predators, and they feed on fish, birds, turtles, squirrels, and rabbits, basically on small mammals. They also sometimes feed on dead animals, or they also steal prey. Their niche is to kill weak and old, slower animals, keeping the animals' population strong. They also eat dead animals' matter and help with the nature's cleanup process. What about their reproduction and population? So for reproduction, both males and females eagles plays an active role in rearing. They build nests together and they return to nest each year to mate and care for a new pair of babies. They only breed one brood per year. They also have a K-rated strategies, and females begins nesting at age 5 until 25, 20 years of egg laying basically. Juveniles fly at about 10 to 12 weeks and permanently leave the nest a month later. What about their population? So this is the population rate in each places. But what important here is by the early 1960s, the count of nesting bald eagles plummeted to about 400 in the lower 48 states. But today it is the complete opposite in their population, with the overall population of 300,000, with some 14,000 breeding pair in the skies over the North America. So their distribution pattern is random, depend on age, breeding location, and food availability. They migrate when lakes and rivers are free. Usually migration occurs ward or to open waters. But they return to breeding grounds when weather and food are permitted, usually from January to March. So what possibly made these species endangered in the past? So their population was almost wiped out in the mid-1990s. First reason is because of sport hunting and habitat destruction. The next reason is because of electrocution from power lines. But the main reason here is because of DDT, a pesticide that is used after World War II. This pesticide wreaked havoc on bald eagles that eat contaminated fish, weakening their eggshells so much that they crack during incubation. And this was the start of the decline in population. So what kind of conservations were taken to help these bald eagles? So in 1967, these eagles were protected under Endangered Species Act, ESA, and also in 1972, they banned the pesticide DDT, which then followed by captive breeding programs and habitat protections, and by making surveys on the to track the populations annually. And because of these conservations, from around 400 eagles in 1963, now we have over 70,000 nesting pairs in the lower 48 states in 2020, and they are not considered as endangered anymore. So here is the statistics on the growing population of bald eagles. Here we can see that the population started to increase again from 1980 to now 2020, and we have a lot of nesting pairs with overall 70,000. And here is the population size in 2018 and 2019. We have overall 300,000 bald eagles over the area. And they are removed from the Endangered Species Act list in 2017 because of the increasing population. Now that we have learned about all three species, let's move on to our next part of the presentation. Let's look at the conservation groups that are taking actions to mediate the needs of expanding human populations and the need of animal species. So there are different kinds of conservation groups all around the world, but according to my research, I have chosen four conservation groups. First, the World Wildlife Fund, Conservation International, the United Nations, and the Wildlife Conservation Society. So what kind of actions are they taking right now? So they work with the government to establish and protect public lands, national parks, and wildlife refuges. They help write the legislation such as the Endangered Species Act (ESA) of 1973 in the United States to protect various species. They also work with law enforcement to prosecute wildlife crimes like wildlife trafficking and illegal huntings. They also promote biodiversity to support the growing human population while preserving existing species and habitat. So these are the current actions that they have been taking to protect the biodiversity and to improve the ecosystem. So let's evaluate their success of actions. Let's take the United States Endangered Species Act as an example here. So because of this act that they implemented, it is illegal under the Act to capture, hunt, or shoot or harm an animal that is listed as endangered. Basically, in other words, this act is protecting the endangered species from people's activities. And this act also increased the population of bald eagles. Like I have mentioned earlier, they are now no longer endangered. The giant panda population also increased, mainly because of this act. And it is also, according to my research, around 200 species, including grizzly bear and flagon and gray wolf. They were saved from extinctions in the first 33 years of the law existence. So I do think that the actions that these conservation organizations and groups have been taking are really effective and they really have a big impact, which is good impacts on the wildlife and the endangered species. Even though we can see the results immediately, we can start to see the results slowly in the coming years or throughout the years, slowly and slowly, right? But let's leave these conservation groups and organizations aside for a while, and let's focus more on what can we do as a community, what can we do as humans to save and conserve these species. First, we need to focus on education and community engagement. We need to raise awareness on the importance of biodiversity and ecosystems and how it impacts on the human well-being. Especially in developing countries, most of the majority of the people, they have no idea of what might be the consequences if one species is about to go extinct. So we really need to raise awareness here about the biodiversity and ecosystem. We also have to include local people and communities in conservation. Aside from always depending on the conservation organizations and groups, what we can do here is, as individuals, countries, or as community, we need to implement strong environmental regulations for wildlife and habitats, especially in developing countries. Because let's take Myanmar as an example. Here in my country, we don't really have a good implementations and regulations for wildlife and habitats and for to conserve animals. So the last step we need to take here is to um, so the last step we need to take is the conservation and sustainable management with long-term perspective. What do I mean here is that we need to protect habitats and endangered species with sustainable ways. For example, fishing, farming, agriculture. In all those areas, in all those fields, we have to use sustainable methods and sustainable equipment, for example. And we also need a stewardship in every businesses that we do for the long-term perspective and with the intentions to help or to improve the biodiversity and ecosystems. We need that kind of stewardship, long-term perspective and long-term goals for our future generations. So this is what we can do as humans, as communities, and as a society. But what can we do as individuals on a daily basis to help these endangered species? So what we can do here is we can volunteer in local conservative groups, and we can also spread awareness even to our family or even to our close friend. We can always spread the awareness of the endangered species or about the biodiversity and ecosystems. We can also participate in habitat restoration. We can donate funds to wildlife conservation charities and organizations. Relating with three species that I have included in my presentation, what we can do for Irrawaddy dolphin is that we can use and promote sustainable practices, for example, in fiction, agriculture, and land use. We can also join local conservation teams and projects, and we can volunteer ourselves. We can also spread awareness. For koala, we can donate funds. We can also spread awareness, of course. For person, for a person who are living in Australia, they also need to donate, but they also can participate in avoiding illegal hunting or doing illegal stuff that can impact on the animals. So to conclude again, I have made a research on three different endangered species, which are Irrawaddy dolphins, koala, and bald eagle. And through research about Irrawaddy dolphin populations and my country, it can be learned that more conservation programs and awareness about the environment are needed. I've also learned that the overall ecosystems and biodiversity always need to be balanced for the sustainability of the earth. The next thing that I learned, which is really important, is that the niche of one species is always related or depend on the niche of other species, which is really amazing that if any of these species on Earth become extinct, the balance of the Earth will be broken, and this can lead to many consequences. And I do think that human conservations play very crucial roles in this place, since the well-being of humans, the well-being of animals, and the earth always depends on our actions. So this is my conclusion, and so this is the end of my presentation, and thank you so much for listening until the very end. And I hope you do get something good in return from my presentation as well. Bye bye.